Hey there, mountain bike fans. I just happen to be wearing a microphone. It's a sign. I should probably talk about the chisel. So back when I recorded the first video about the Specialized Chisel FS, I said I'd come back and do another one about the spec, how I had built it and what I thought about that. It's been a busy summer, and so it's taken me longer than I had hoped to do that, but I figure I'll run through that, give you some kind of longer term thoughts about it, and hopefully that'll be a worthwhile watch. So, start with the drivetrain. This is really my kind of a variation on my long-time favorite drivetrain. Got the Drivetrain Descendant carbon cranks, 170, dub bottom bracket. I've always found these to be a great value. They're pretty light, pretty stiff. I just really like them. So one of the things that I like about them best though, and one of the reasons I tend to stick with SRAM cranks, or I have over the years, is because they have the 3-bolt chainring mounting pattern. This is I'm a little bit annoyed that they changed that with transmission and the newer road stuff, but in any case, I found this to be just really trouble-free. Doesn't creak. It's only 3 T25 bolts to put on, swap chain rings. I just find it's just a great design. So that's been one of the reasons I've liked these. Then I've got XX Eagle 34 tooth chain ring. It's a beautiful chain ring. I love SRAM Eagle chain rings. The tooth profiles I think are really, really good. The chain rings last a long time. I've found the previous generation, like the first generation narrow wide that they made, they really didn't last long. They got shark tooth pretty easily, and I think they learned a lot from that. And in these Eagle and the later chain rings that they've made, they've got this trippy looking tooth profile, and they run super smooth, and they last a long time. My favorites are actually the slightly lower end forged aluminum ones, but this is beautiful. I had it, so I used it. XX Eagle chain. I usually use the XO Eagles, but I was able to get a good deal on this, and it's also a really nice one. I find that XO level and above are super durable, so I think they're worth it. I have an XO Eagle 10 to 52 tooth cassette. I just love the SRAM cassettes. These Eagle ones in particular, really since the original XX and afterward, these like big one-piece, well essentially two-piece cassettes, I just think they're beautiful. They're works of art, and they last a really long time, and they're really light. I know the transmission design is slightly different. It's kind of like a hybrid between this kind of like single piece and the more full pin design that they have. I'm sure that's good too, but I love these. I've got a GX Eagle rear derailleur. I've never found any reason to go higher than that. I've used higher end ones, but I think this one's just a really good value, and I think you're more likely to hit your derailleur, so I figured I might as well downgrade a little bit there if it doesn't have a significant drop in performance. I have an XO Eagle shifter. I love that shifter. It's got great ergonomics. I love being able to adjust the shifter paddle position, and just the smoothness of the paddle compared to the GX one is huge. They hold up, they work really well, they feel great. It's a contact point, and so I think it's worth getting the nicer one. So I really like that. I use the XTR M9100 pedals, the 3mm narrower design, spindle length ones, and I love them. I mean, they're an awesome pedal. They're rebuildable. They're super durable. They're beautiful. Low stack. They clear mud well. The engagement's super smooth. What's not to like other than the price? I've actually stuck with the stock RockShox Deluxe Select Plus shock on this, and I've gone back and forth a lot about that over the time that I've had it, because I've felt like this bike would really benefit from a third kind of platform mode, like a third position that's not fully locked out but isn't fully open. But I've never actually gone ahead and gotten one, because the only thing that I've found that would work with this is a Fox Float SL, and I'm concerned about the smaller body and just durability and all that type of thing. And I found this to be a really great shock, really overall. There's some times when I kind of wish I had that middle position, but most of the time, got a long climb, I lock it out, and then the rest of the time I have it open. The bike's super efficient, and it doesn't blow through its travel super easily, but it's super supple off the top. So that's proven to be a really nice shock. No complaints. I have the Fox Factory 34 fork up front with a Grip X damper. No complaints. I think this is a great chassis. I'm curious about the 36 SL, but I've really never had any complaints about this. I'm not sure where I stand on the, the move to the Grip X as opposed to the Grip 2 you could get with these before. I really liked the Grip 2, but the Grip X is nice. I kind of like that you can get it kind of locked out. I don't tend to lock out my fork very much, but firming it up more is kind of nice. So I've actually been pretty happy with that damper. I'm a little bit more ambivalent about it, but I do really like that platform. They've been great forks, just really trouble-free. They're supple. It feels like it pairs really well with this bike, and that is a 130 millimeter version, which makes this an Evo. Overall, I feel like that configuration, this Evo configuration, does work really well for this bike. For around here, long climbs, steep climbs, I do slam my seat forward, and I do have the shock in the high position here. You can flip it, and that steepens the seat tube angle a bit. It does raise the bottom bracket, steepens the head tube angle too, but it feels like a really good balance. So I like that. With the wheels, I have DT Swiss 350, the 36 tooth ratchet versions, so not the new DEG versions, but the last previous generation. They're light, they're super reliable, just like most DT products. And I mean, I've been using 350 hubs for a long time now, and I really never had any issues. I love how easy they are to service, and yeah, just no complaints. I use the center lock ones largely because they're easier to clean. And I think, if you have access to a cassette tool, lock ring tool, so basically if you can be near home sometimes, I think they're the way to go. I don't have strong feelings about center lock or 6-bolt, but that's why I often choose center lock these days. For a bike packing bike, I think there's an advantage with 6-bolt, because maybe you need to replace a spoke way out someplace, and not having to carry around a larger tool, which a cassette tool generally is kind of advantageous. I've laced those with Sapim race spokes and DT Swiss Squarks alloy nipples. I just really like building wheels with the Squarks tool. Find it's really nice. To Stan's Archmark 4 rims. These feel like a great rim on this bike. I think, I go between these and the flows in terms of, and the crests. I have crests on a gravel bike. I guess I'm just a big fan of the Mark IV rims. I've had a lot of good luck with Stan's rims over the years, and I think these are my favorite yet. I love off-center rims. These are light, they're very forgiving, they just have a great ride feel. I feel like I'm super spoiled with these rims, so big fan. I have the CL800 rotors, 180 rear, 203 front. That's Shimano's kind of replacement for the MT800. Honestly, I haven't noticed a big difference. I think these look really cool, but MT800s were awesome rotors. They're both Ice Tech. They're both, stainless on the outside, aluminum core with the aluminum fins. They're great rotors, no real complaints. I'm using the SLX BLM 7100 levers with the M7120 4-piston front brake and the 7100 2-piston rear brake. I did that because I can. I'm rarely lacking power in the rear. It's usually the front where I want more, if ever. If I'm going to have a place where I want more power, I find, for around here, this is a great setup on this bike. Probably be fine with 2 pistons, honestly, but I like the 4-piston, save a little bit of weight with the 2-piston. Either way, it's probably a toss-up, but I found these to be great brakes. I love the lever feel, and, I haven't had issues with wandering bite point. On this bike, I think partly just because of the way the brake attaches, it's like not a standard brake mount. It's got kind of an adapter that it uses to bring it up to the post mount. And I think it's not as stiff as it could be. So I was getting a lot of vibration and noise on long descents with the rear brake when I had metallic pads on it. So I've switched that to the Shimano resin pads, and on a really long descent, I'll get a little bit of warbling at the end of it, but it quiets down right away and it doesn't feel like anything abnormal. So I like this setup. I have the metallics up front. I think that's nice, bit of extra power. Yeah, super happy with that. I've got the Race Face Turbine R35 stem in a 50 millimeter. It's a beautiful stem, does its job well. I did start out with a Ritchie in a 55, but that was a pretty crummy stem for various reasons. This is much nicer. I've got the Race Face Next carbon bars. These are 760, which I kind of thought was maybe going to be a little on the narrow side, but I kind of wanted to try it, and I feel like it's perfect for this bike. It's definitely a little on the narrow side, having mostly been riding 780s or 800s for a while, but it feels very appropriate on this bike and just kind of enhances that cross-country feel. It's a super nimble, playful bike, and this bar width feels really good. So that's actually worked out really well. And this is my first time on 35 millimeter bars. These bars they feel great. They certainly don't feel overly harsh. And so, I guess it's okay. I think I'd always maybe tended to think, 35 seemed a little unnecessary, but, I guess, especially with the carbon bar, I'm sure they can tune it plenty well. And then to top it off, I have the Ergon GE1 factory grips. It's a little bit like more translucent rubber, and I love these grips. The GE1s just in general are my favorite mountain bike grip. Just the contouring, the grip pattern on them, I feel it's really comfortable, but it's super grippy. Even, if my hands are sweaty or something, really big fan of those grips. I have the Wolftooth Light Action dropper lever. Love the feel of that. I know there are fancier levers out there now. Wolftooth has their Pro lever. This, I find, the lever's just right where I want it. It's about where I like to put my shifter lever, and so it feels really balanced. And yeah, it's very light action. It works great. It's got a lot of grip. So yeah, that's highly recommended. The only issue I've had with Wolftooths over the years is because they're so heavily, they've got so much grip on them, they feel like they're a little rough to the point of like maybe you could cut yourself on them in the right situation, like if you plowed your thumb into it or something. I've never had that happen though, so maybe that's just kind of theoretical. That lever is activating the Fox transfer, factory transfer. And this is not the current generation, this previous generation. These are kind of notorious for being a little bit more of a pain to service and needing a bit more service, being a little less reliable. I've had zero issues with it, but it is, I guess it's an item on this bike that feels like a little bit of a liability because I'm kind of putting off servicing it, other than just doing basic lubing. But I will say it feels awesome. It seems silly to have like a fancy dropper, it just needs to go up and down, right? But having a nice dropper that goes up and down smoothly and sounds nice, it feels nice, it's awesome. So I love that. Not looking forward to full rebuild, but so far it's working well. And it's worth noting, before every ride I do clean the seals and stanchions of all the suspension components and the dropper with Pedro's Bike Lust and a clean rag, and I feel like that really extends the life of the seals, keeps things working smoothly. I did a little video about that. Check that out here, maybe. On top of that, I have a Specialized Power saddle. This is a more recent addition. I was using a Phenom on here before, and I love the Phenom. It's just a just fades away. Just feels like a good all-around saddle. But I actually really like this as a mountain saddle in particular. Partly I feel like it pushes me to sit a little farther forward on it, which kind of steepens the C-tube angle a little bit more effectively. But it also just feels super minimal. Feels like it's not there where you don't need it, and it's there where you do. So I'm actually really happy with this so far. Haven't been riding this as long, but yeah, great experiences so far. Tire-wise, you know, tried some different things different times of the year, but I'm kind of back to my Specialized Fast Track Grid T7 2.35 rear tire and Specialized Ground Control Grid T7 2.35 inch front tire. This is an awesome combination for this bike. The rear definitely is never high on traction. It's always a little slippery. And so it kind of, I think that partly makes me feel like I shouldn't push the bike too hard, but it also makes it feel a little bit more playful, a little bit more loose. I always prefer to have a little bit more traction up front than I do in the rear, so that's kind of a nice combination. I feel like this bike would also be really good with just ground control. I've used Purgatory front, ground control rear, and that's nice, but I find the Purgatories, in my opinion, roll a little slow, and I love how fast this combination rolls. It just feels like it fits this bike's personality really well. So yeah, that's what I've kind of come back to. Finally, I do have a K-Edge Wahoo mount on top of the, you know, as a top cap computer mount. I've been really happy with that. I like it's pretty small and out of the way. The only issue is I have crashed and it's like broken the Wahoo. So it's kind of seems like it'd be out of the way, but it's not as out of the way as it seems like it should be. And I also have Specialized Z cages. I've always been a huge King cage fan. I still think they're the best cages, but for the Bivo bottles, I think these are the best cages. They just hold them really securely. They don't mark them up as much. And I do really, really like the Bivo bottles. So I've kind of chosen, since I've gone to Bivo, I've kind of chosen to go with those cages. So, and they've been great, no complaints. So in terms of long-term impressions, this bike has really just kind of continued to grow on me. It is super capable. It definitely feels like a cross-country bike, but it's forgiving enough that if you're in something rough, you know, it definitely takes the edge off. It lets you stay in control longer. It feels great on steep stuff. You know, I'm definitely not just like plowing things, but I'm riding some, you know, fairly rowdy trails. And I feel like it puts me in this sweet spot where I'm able to do the rowdier trails comfortably, and I'm able to, you know, have the benefits of a full suspension bike where you're able to just find some flow in rougher stuff, but it's still super fun to climb on. It's still a really light cross-country bike that climbs super efficiently and really rewards long days. Over the summer, I've just found myself doing long rides that involve a lot of maybe fire road, maybe some, you know, up on our crest here, you know, just rough dirt roads, but then a ton of trail too. And just like a mixture of those things. And it's a pretty sweet bike for that, you know, and that's where the not overly steep seat tube angle comes in, because I find, as I talked about in the seat tube angle video I did, you know, if it's too steep, if it's super steep, it's fine if you're just kind of riding the elevator up and then dropping your seat and plowing down. But for more rolling terrain, too steep of a seat tube angle just isn't as comfortable. It puts too much weight on your hands. It just kind of makes you feel like you're going over the bars a bit. And so this definitely feels like a cross-country bike in that it doesn't have a super, super steep seat tube angle. It's got a steep enough seat tube angle, I think. But yeah, it feels really well balanced. I think it's definitely grown on me. I was a little iffy about that aspect of it initially. The suspension, you know, it's a single pivot. So if you're on the brakes in rough stuff, you feel the rough stuff a lot more. It sits up, it firms up. You know, that's a trade-off you make to get the lighter weight of the single pivot. So I don't feel like it's a major problem. It's something to be aware of, you know. I think at the end of the day, this is a cross-country bike, but to me, it's a cross-country bike that really is like cross-country and trail. It's everything. I mean, yeah, I guess you'd call it a downcountry bike too, whatever you want, but it's super capable. I don't tend to feel underbiked on it in most situations. And given I am just not doing the big jump lines, there are places where I'm not taking it. I'm not doing big drops because it just doesn't feel like the right bike for that. But honestly, that's not as much what I'm looking to do at this point. I'm not trying to get hurt. I'm trying to find the balance of just having as much fun as possible, and that's this balance of rowdy trails, but not the insane trails, ridden on a bike that highlights them. It makes the climbs fun, it makes the descents super fun. And yeah, it does that really well. So I've been super impressed, and I think it's beautiful. I'm so impressed with the flex tail design. In an aluminum bike, this is not doesn't feel like a second tier bike. It feels like a premium aluminum bike. And of course, the Carbon Epic has some cool things. It's got down tube storage. It has an extra 10 millimeters of travel in the rear, and it's got a knock block in the headset area. But I haven't found a lot to complain about with this bike. It's been a lot of fun. I will say, I wish the chainstay protector were a little wider. It's a great chainstay protector. It's super effective. It's a nice one, but I feel like it could be a little wider. And I do think the rear brake mount, I wish it was a little bit more solid. I wish it didn't use that adapter. Like I said, that's part of the problem with the brake noise, but I haven't had brake noise since I've switched to resin pads. I still have plenty of power. It's definitely not uncommon to come across bikes that just don't jive well with certain brake and pad and rotor combinations. And this is a really light bike, so I'm kind of like, well, what do you expect? Overall, I can't recommend it enough. If you're looking for that type of bike, all-around bike, you're not looking to push it downhill super hard. You want to ride everything, and you don't want to spring for the extra money of the Carbon Epics. This is a pretty hard bike to beat, I think. I feel like I'm just being a total fanboy, but I really am stoked on it. And I have ridden some Epics in the time that I've had this, and it's a great bike. I love the way that rides, but I think mostly because of the build on this feels lighter and more playful than the ones I've ridden, than the Epics I've ridden. And I really do think that just comes down to the build, but I do think that shows how much you can do with this bike. Like, this bike feels great. And this isn't an over-the-top build. It's a high-end, I would say, but it's certainly not top of the line. And it's not an overly light build. It's kind of middle of the road. And I feel like that's kind of where this bike is, which sounds kind of boring, but it's really fun. So I hope this is helpful in some way. Thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate it. It's super fun making these. I love talking about bikes, and I love, chatting in the comments. It's super fun. So comment, like, and subscribe. It's fun to see that people are doing that. It makes me want to make more videos, and I would love to make some more if I have a reason to. So thanks a lot. Have fun out there. Peace.